Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the talk today. My name is Alex Bea. I'm a DevRel engineer at Apostrophe. Want to talk to you today about Apostrophe CMS. First, and in case a couple of people might still join, going to start by just saying thank you to the organizers and all the volunteers and moderators for their work today. I think going to the online model sort of at late in the game, I'm sure was a lot of work. So I appreciate their work, and I appreciate you being here to join me. I am here to talk about Apostrophe CMS. It's a Node.js CMS that, as I'll get into, I believe has sort of all the power you'd expect from industry-leading CMS, but in my opinion, a better dev experience, and I think that's something that that maybe we can all appreciate here. So to get started, I'm going to start a little survey time. So I think my moderator is going to, Chow, thank you, is going to fire up a poll here to ask a couple questions. The first one being about your experience with Apostrophe, and is that going up? I cannot tell. But I'm interested in seeing what people's experience with the poll is up. I hear. Okay, so your my internet cut out there for a moment. Can someone confirm that they can hear me? Chow? Hello? Test. Hello?
They should be able to hear you.
Great.
I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. My internet here is somewhat unreliable, so sometimes it goes out. I see that in the poll results that some people have built with it in production. Everyone has heard of it. That's really great. And as a start, I think the next question that we can put the second poll up is about who you are as a developer or in this mix of doing this work. So to answer for myself, I sort of struggle with calling myself full stack, although I've done a bunch of Node work in the course of my work at Apostrophe and at a personal project or two. But I've really done mostly work on the front end, and so my sort of passion is on the front end, but increasingly with my work with Apostrophe is on the back end with Node as well. So can we see the answers to that? Most people are full stack or not a dev, so that's cool. I think there's a lot to offer in Apostrophe for everyone, and I'll try to make sure that the not a devs feel included in this as well. So a little bit more. So I'm a developer relations engineer at Apostrophe. This mainly means that I was a regular senior dev here, but answered questions and messed with the documentation a bit more than other people. So so they sort of made that my job, and I'm really enjoying that. I did start with Punk Avenue. So Apostrophe was built at Punk Avenue, an agency in Philadelphia, and now we have in the last year split off into our own company, and so now I'm with that group and working on it full time. So the plan for today, I want to sort of cover these various topics. I think I know this is a conference where most people are coming from the Drupal, WordPress, and PHP worlds. So I want to definitely speak to that experience because I started on those platforms and started in the PHP CMS world. But I hope that you come away from this with the understanding that Apostrophe is a great experience as a developer, but also really has the power and flexibility to handle pretty much anything you would need to do with a CMS, any project you might need a CMS for. So hope you to get away from those things. So to kick things off first, of course, what is Apostrophe CMS? So what is its space within the CMS landscape? It is open source. Open source is extremely important to the people who built Apostrophe. It's extremely important to our team still. I think it comes up in pretty much every discussion about feature development and how we work with our community and communication around the CMS. It's extremely integral to who we are as a team and what this platform is. It is Node.js, so it's you can use JavaScript through and through, front end languages and or client side languages on the back end. At the time, the very first version of Apostrophe was built in Symfony back in 2008, so using a PHP framework. But then, as Node was getting really was getting bigger and really stable, they decided that the next major version would be built in Node.js, and so you could really not have to deal with any mental shift going from front end work to back end work. It would all sort of be JavaScript and work like that. The current major version was released in 2016. So the current major version 2.x has been around for about 4 years now, or almost 4 years. It does use MongoDB for the database. I think I'm not, as I said, I'm more of a sort of front end side of the full stack equation. So databases aren't my big thing, but I've really enjoyed working with MongoDB as someone who learned SQL querying and working with the MySQL database. I think the MongoDB API is really JavaScript friendly, and I understand that there's a security benefit to being a NoSQL database from avoiding SQL injection attacks and things like that. And it's also nice that the database documents look like JSON. They sort of are easy to parse that way as well. It is highly extensible. So there are a lot of modules that are available out of the box that are included in core, but that are also available. And the sort of module system is really built to be very flexible and let you do pretty much anything you need to do, and do that fairly easily. And then it's primarily in context edited. So this means that you can see what the end visitors are going to be looking at as you're editing it. And so as much as possible, it is in context edited. And so we will start actually with a quick demo of that. I think everyone has used Apostrophe, so I don't need to spend too much time here. But this is actually a demo site that you can visit at demo.apostrophe.org. And then it'll spin up one of these demo sites for you to play with. So I encourage you to check this out later. I think some people said they had heard of it, but haven't used it a lot. And so I'll give you a quick tour around. There are a couple major pieces of user interface here. At the top, there's the admin bar, which includes sort of access to global settings. These are all, my demo has been sitting there for a while, so I'll just spin up another one. But the global document is available there to let you edit some like global settings and other sort of administrative things, settings and content that might be available on every page of the site. User management, so you can add users, assign them to different groups, reset passwords and all that stuff from the user manager. And it has a image gallery like you would expect from any good CMS, with filtering and search and all that good stuff. I think there's a file manager as well for non-image media, and so you can sort of put all that stuff and manage it and use it as you need to. And then the admin bar can be sort of configured to organize your other information, your other content in nice ways like this as well. Here we are seeing the different content types that are available, as well as the pages. In Apostrophe, we call content types, like you might know in Drupal, piece types. So WordPress has its post types, Apostrophe has piece types. And so here we have the artist piece, artwork piece, etc. And opening up the manager for these, and then an editing one, we can get to the things that are sort of not in context friendly, the slug and the piece title, publishing information, some like SEO configuration and things like that. And so you've accessed all that. So that sort of content management interface is there for you before you sort of get to the in context editing. The other major area of UI is the context menu. So this menu changes a little bit based on where you are in the site. So if you are on a piece page, you'll have some different options here. But this gives you access to things that sort of deal with what you're looking at. So I'm on a page, so I can create a new page. I can edit the settings of that page and change the type of page, for example. SEO again. You can reorganize within the page tree, sort of move things around, especially if your navigation is using the page tree. Move it to trash. And then one key feature in Apostrophe is that for pages, pieces, and the global doc and everything, you have access to a page versions or a versions interface, so that even though by default everything is sort of saved automatically and changes happen live, if you make a change that you need to roll back, you can see what those changes were, what changes happened recently, and then revert to those changes so that so you can go back if you made a mistake or anything like that. So in Apostrophe, nothing is ever fully gone. You have access to that stuff through the versions interface. So there's a lot more that could be shown here. And actually, the other major thing is the widgets. So as I've moved my cursor around, probably noticed all these things pop up, the little plus sign buttons, and these give access to your widget menus. So the sort of structure of content in an apostrophe page or in an apostrophe site are that you have widgets, which are your structured content blocks, whether they be simple like a rich text or sort of a sort of layout widget like this 2-panel one here. And these then inside widgets you can have, so you have widgets which are then placed in areas. So these menus that drop down and these lines that are appearing are representative of areas. So this whole thing is an area with a couple of different widgets inside of it. And so we define what widgets belong in each areas. Each area can have different things. You can see up here in the marquee, there's much fewer options. And then those areas are added to templates that are then structured based on your needs. So you can have your homepage template and your art piece or page template and all that. So widgets in areas in your templates that go to these various sections. There's a lot more in the UI. I think there could be a whole talk about sort of exploring the apostrophe UI. But I encourage you after the talk to go to the demo and try it out yourself. Again, I'll drop in some links in the Slack channel after this. But this would be something to check out and play around and see it from that side of things. But I'm going to jump back to the talk here. We did our demo time, but I want to talk about the dev experience. And so most people in the talks were in here were devs, and even for those who aren't, I think this is an important element of Apostrophe. And we're gonna look at some code, but first I'll note that we do have a CLI that's available to do a lot of work for you. Here are I think all the current commands in the CLI, and these are, you actually prepend apostrophe before each of these commands. So on the right, you can see me actually doing that. But you can create a project, and by default, it uses the apostrophe boilerplate repository. But you can pass in a boilerplate flag with the link to any other apostrophe project repo, and it can use that as the boilerplate. Similarly, you can create a piece type. This is an example of making a cheese shop. This is my favorite cheese shop here in Madison, Wisconsin, called Formagination. So we can create a piece type called cheese. We can create a widget to go into a page called fancy layout, and all of this sort of, and what it does is creates the sort of directory structure and some initial configurations for these modules. And just to help you get started quickly. So I will now take a look at some code here. So I talked about dev experience and how important this is. I think one of the things that makes me not want to go back to other CMSs, even if I wasn't working for this company, is this experience and how it all is happening in code. So if you're familiar with Node, if you've not developed with Apostrophe but are familiar with Node.js, then this is probably still going to look pretty familiar to you. If this were a sort of very direct Node application with not using a framework or anything like that, there would be a whole lot more happening at the top of this application file, this app.js file. But most of that is being covered by requiring and bringing in Apostrophe. And so in the app.js file, you'll be bringing in Apostrophe and then passing in a big configuration object. The couple of things, and I should say this code here is also open source. It's also available. This is that Open Museum site that we were just looking at. So you can poke around this as well. We created that site not only for the demo, but as a place that people can reference for a lot of our best or common practices in developing with Apostrophe. So it will have a short name, which is used for the database, for the name of the database, as well as some other purposes. And then the bulk of the app.js file is the modules object. And these are all the modules that we are telling the application to initialize. So when we go in here, we all of the core modules are, you don't need to put those in here. They'll take care of themselves. But any of the optional official modules, any of the other community modules that you install, or modules that you create yourself, here's this category object types that is created. And so each of these is assigned to an object, and this is because you can start configuring your modules here. One practice that we've often used is to just sort of include what base module that these different custom ones extend. So the artist piece type extends apostrophe pieces, which sort of powers most of the piece magic. But you don't need to include those here. You can do those in the individual index.js files as well. So here we have the app.js file. That's most of what's happening here is just saying this is what we need to start up when we're starting up the application. If we actually look at a piece type, at the index.js file and the piece type, you're going to see a number of things. But again, this is a JavaScript module that's being exported and has a configuration object. So if you know JavaScript, probably hear a jet going by me right now. If you know JavaScript, if you're familiar with that, then the structure of this should feel familiar. If you're mostly just doing front-end JS, then you might not have used require or the require method much, but otherwise this is just JavaScript. So in the piece type, we're defining some basic things like the name, the visual label, and all that. The CLI does take care of that stuff if you use it. There's some additional configuration here for things like the overriding the default manual sorting, and some configuration for the user interface. The bulk of it is going to be the add fields array in most cases. So when you're working in other CMSs and you're site building with them and creating content types, there's a lot of clicking around, opening drop downs, selecting types, entering in a few fields, and all that. This is all different here because we're adding it in code. And if you're using VS Code or Atom editors, code editors, there are also plugins, so you can easily I did the wrong one because I can't type and talk at the same time. But you can quickly add fields using the plugin tool there. So I've just added a select field, so you can add those. Out of the box, there are lots of field types. Here we see a string field. This is a singleton, which is just a single widget, and this is putting an apostrophe or a image field on the screen or in the schema. More string fields. I think a reverse join. So this is joining from one type to another. And I'll pop over to our documentation here for a moment. There are a lot of content, or a lot of field types that are available to use out of the box. Boolean, color, date, all these kinds of things, and to build out your data model as you need it. If I jump over to the artworks one, another example, we have a join field. So again, I mentioned sort of being able to connect things. So another in like advanced custom fields in WordPress, I think that it's called like a reference field. So this lets you sort of connect one piece that you're creating to another one. And again, this is just a configuration object that you put in this array and start the app, and it's available for people to start creating content that way. There's a bunch more in here that is sort of repeated. You can arrange fields as you please using a nice little arrange fields array. But then a lot of the power comes with some of these other conveniences that are available to you. So I think creating the basic content types and things like that is very easy. But there's a lot more that comes out of the box as well, or that you have available to you. So we have this API to do a lot of things, and here in my artworks module or artworks piece module, I'm adding, telling it to use a construct function, and so there are a few sort of startup cycle hooks, construct and before construct, and so these let you do add additional configurations and additional options to a module for use. So there's a route module which lets you create routes that aren't included automatically, or there is a headless module, but you might need a route that doesn't exist already. So you can create one pretty easily that way, creating a get route, assigning it a name and the path, and then sort of doing some work in it. Down below here, this site is using an importer. And so we have a hook available that before the imported document is inserted into the database, we can do stuff with it. So here we are taking the imported record and assigning the piece that's going to be created some properties based on that record. Some things are like one-to-one assignment. Other things you might want to sort of mess with the record data before you assign it to the piece. And there are hooks like this for lots of things. There's a sort of hook for before a index page is served, and you can do stuff with the page before it's served. There's a hook for before and after a piece or page is saved, maybe just pieces, before they're saved and after they're saved, to do other work. So all of this is available and convenient for use as you get more complicated and as you want to sort of do more creative and more complex things. And so all this is documented and they're free to use to really let you do anything that you would need to do. And again, I sort of drive this home. Again, it's all JavaScript. So if you know how to use JavaScript on the front end, it's a pretty like short walk into doing some of this back-end JavaScript work. And yeah, I'll just quickly note here, you can also assign, if you are a database person and really a back-end person and like working with that, you might be familiar with cursors and there are hooks to add or functions here to add cursor filters, custom cursor filters to do things as well. So getting back to the presentation, that was our code tour. Thanks for going on the tour with me. And because I do know that this is a conference of mostly Drupal and WordPress devs, I wanted to speak to my experience coming from those platforms. I enjoyed working with Drupal. To some extent, I enjoyed working with WordPress, but I think there are some significant differences and that are worth sort of calling out. Both may be good and maybe not, and that's for you to decide. So the big difference, of course, is that it's Node. It uses Node on the back end, not PHP. But you don't need to Node yet. The one thing I noticed was that when I eventually did do a sort of straight up Node project and did a course of, outside of work on Node, I realized that I recognized a lot of it already and sort of understood a lot of it already because I've been working with Apostrophe. And so you don't need to know Node yet. The Apostrophe is built to sort of lead you through the site building that you need to do. And so you can sort of ease your way into it that way. It is all JavaScript. So if you are front-end dev like I was, then it's a nice friendly way to start getting into back-end development. I think that's a nice benefit. All the site building is in code. So as a developer, I love this. I think a lot of the developers use it like it. It not only allows you to avoid a lot of like the pointing and clicking drop downs, saving, doing that over and over again while you're site building, but it also means that you can sort of set up nice boilerplates that have a lot of this stuff ready to go. You can set up conveniences for your team to figure out how you like to build modules, how do you like to construct pieces, and then sort of reuse that as code very easily. And of course, then it's all version controlled as well. So I think the Drupal, last time I worked in Drupal 8, version 8 had just come out not too long before, and I know that there were some changes that allowed you to commit configuration to code, but this is sort of that through and through. There's no sort of, that's not an add-on. Quick drink. The templating uses Nunjux templating language, which is very Twig-like. So if you've used Twig in Drupal 8 or in WordPress, you're going to be able to understand that very well. It's very similar. I believe they both came out like sort of evolved from Django templating, if I have that right. But yeah, so Nunjux is good to use. It's a little different, but it's not too bad. When it comes to front-end assets, so less CSS compilation is built in. When the major version was built, this is a decision to allow people to write less, and it would compile automatically and be served up in one nice juicy file. But we actually internally no longer use that. So we decided that's as front-end developers, we wanted to use our own build system, and it's easy to use your own. There's a push assets method that can be used or push assets function that's easy to use to push your own front-end assets to the client, however you want to build them. And this is definitely a bit of a drawback at the moment, I guess. The community is certainly smaller, but it is active and growing. I mean, Drupal and WordPress have absolutely enormous communities, so we're not going to pretend that we equal them there. But we have a really engaged core team that's active in all our community channels and are dedicated to supporting our community that way. The community is growing. We love seeing people in the Apostrophe community helping one another before we can even get to them to help. So this is something that's going to be changing, and that's going to be growing over the next year or so, and over the years. But it's a fact of life at the moment. And then as far as modules, Drupal, I think that it's well known that the module ecosystems are very huge as well. And so the module ecosystem is smaller for Apostrophe at the moment. But I'll note that most of the existing official modules, as well as other community modules, serve most of the needs that you probably are going to have. They have been sort of developed over many years now, based on real life client needs, and so they serve most of those needs already. there is an expectation that you're going to be making your own for your own needs. This is that's part of Apostrophe, is that it gives you lots of freedom and a lot of power, and you're sort of expected to do that. So if you need a testimonial widget that looks a particular way and is constructed a particular way, it's pretty easy to build that yourself and make it exactly as you need it. There'd be nothing wrong, and certainly it'd be welcome for someone to create a testimonial widget and open source it and put it out there. But it's also really easy to create things like that on your own and kind of serve your own needs. So talking a little bit more about those modules, let's talk about some ones that are available now. So I'm going to first feature some major feature-rich modules, and then talk about other ones that are available to serve a lot of the very typical needs. But yeah, first I'm going to highlight some of the marquee players in our module suite. So the first being Apostrophe Headless. So I know that we all know that headless development, headless applications are all the rage right now. At a Node conference a few years ago, this is something that was coming up in a lot of conversations, and so and it actually turned out after that conference that it only, I think, took a few days for our lead software architect to create this module that was really just exposing APIs that were already there, but by making them public, and so this can be used to surface piece data, retrieve pieces and pages, including filtering those pieces as you pull them down, inserting and updating pieces and pages, getting fully rendered templates, or fully rendered pages and page fragments using the APIs, and a whole bunch more. So if you need to either use, if you want to or need to use Apostrophe as a headless CMS, or you want to use Apostrophe for both its backend and serving the front end templates, but then want to use that data also in another application, you can do all that pretty easily with Apostrophe Headless. And those APIs will be sort of made available to you. Second is Apostrophe Multisite. So just like it sounds, this allows you to generate a multi-site application using a single code base. So you have one code base, many sites that are all managed through a dashboard that's also generated for you. And so whether you are at working for a university that needs to make sites for lots of different schools, or you have like chains of multiple businesses and want to show those, then you can use multi-site to do that. Here's an example of a company called Thirstie, a startup called Thirstie, that was using a white labeled Apostrophe Multisite to build sites for alcohol companies to market and sell their products. And so this uses a Vue application for the e-commerce flow, but then has Apostrophe Multisite powering all these different sites. You might be wondering how these all look so different, even though they're using the same single code base. And the reason is that they're using Apostrophe Palette. So Apostrophe Palette allows the developers working on the site to define styling hooks that can be then edited by end users. So I think this is not like you install this and then suddenly you can change every color on the front end. It's meant to be used strategically to decide what is important and what is okay to be changing the styling of, and then exposes that and allows people to do that as they needed. So it's especially useful for multi-site projects where you want different sites to be able to look different and but still have the convenience of a single code base. Apostrophe Workflow is probably one of our most popular modules. I think, so out of the box by default, Apostrophe does save automatically. So you make changes in context and those changes are saved. And I think that was something that the developers really liked when they first built Apostrophe, and a lot of clients have liked it. But a lot also really feel more comfortable with a sort of draft workflow, draft editor workflow available to them. So pages can be in draft mode and then published when they're ready. And so Apostrophe Workflow both enables that, as well as localization. So you can have different versions of the site for different languages, different countries, other different purposes as you need them. The biggest use case of this is Michelin. So Michelin has, as of December, had Apostrophe running 177 sites worldwide, using all built on Apostrophe, and that goes from their bike sites and their BF Goodrich truck sites and their other sort of main Michelin sites in different countries, and these are all using Apostrophe Workflow for workflow management, as well as the localization and translation of dynamic content. I should say that that's static internationalization, or internationalization of static content, is available in core as well. And then there's a lot more. So aside from those sort of marquee modules, you have Apostrophe Blog, which sort of wraps up a lot of, it takes sort of the things that are already in Apostrophe, wraps them up for the blog use case, and then puts those all out available. Similar for Apostrophe Events, then Apostrophe SEO, adding SEO fields and configurations to your content. Apostrophe Forms allows you to build forms in the UI. Apostrophe Passport handling some user authentication and SAML single sign-on. The custom code editor I want to call out, that is a community created module that adds a code editor to the array of piece field types that, the array of field types that you can add to your content. So that was done by a developer in Malaysia who shared that, and we actually use it on our site as well. And so there's lots more, and you can see more on the right here, and then there's other ones out there, and so it covers most of the needs that you'd probably already have. So speaking of needs, who is it right for? What kind of sites is it right for? The examples that I showed there were a big enterprise site and a big multi-site application startup thing. But I think Apostrophe works really well for all types of sites. So here we have an architecture firm in Philadelphia, a open government initiative in Amsterdam on the lower left there, and then the international sites for Oatly, the oat milk company, also use Apostrophe. And so really all kinds of use cases are great for, or Apostrophe is great for them. And I think because a lot of companies, including those like startups and enterprise, but also smaller companies and developers and things like that Apostrophe is modern technology, highly flexible, and open source. And so that's all important to them. I will say that building Apostrophe sites requires a developer. And so that is a difference between it and something like WordPress, especially. So I think since I won't just sort of give the unsatisfying answer that's good for everyone in every case, because I don't think that's true. But so I think because you need a developer involved, I think it's important that there be a plan for good strategy and design, or a plan for case you should also have good strategy. But I think most of us believe that you should be building projects with good strategy first anyway. So I think if you are able to do that, and if the client is ready to sort of work with you that way, then it can be a good choice. If you're doing just a very limited scope blog site, also there are probably other good other options that might be better. But if you start needing more complex content management, Apostrophe is a really great choice. Looking at what's next over the next year. So as I said, we broke out as our own company just about a year ago. And so I think we've seen a lot of acceleration and our work on Apostrophe over the last year, and even more over the next year as our team has grown. The big thing is going to be the next major version. So 3.x is coming. We are expecting to release an alpha version of it in August, or in a few months, like if we get that focus time in. And so that's going to be really exciting. So that includes a totally new UI that's using Vue.js. You're not going to be tied to using Vue for any project code. It's really just sort of sitting on top of Apostrophe. Yeah, so if you want to use React or your own Vue code or anything like that, it'll work just fine. But Vue will just be powering the UI. You can follow the UI development in the Apostrophe Storybook project on GitHub, and it's live here as well for you to start poking around. Headless and Workflow are going to be built into core. So we found those things are very important to a lot of people, and there's no reason for those not to be included into core in the next major version. And there are lots of other little changes, but one other that I'll call out is that the module API is being refined as well. Our chief software architect, Tom Boutel, has been sharing a lot about that in our Discord, so you should go check that out. But I think it's already pretty easy to be building sites out with Apostrophe, but we've sort of learned lessons and are making that even easier and clearer for you in the next major version. In the next year, there's going to be a big documentation overhaul. Within a few days, we should have the transition to VuePress done. And then I'd say in addition to that, I think even though the documentation is very extensive already, but we do know that there are gaps. And my new role of the developer relations engineer is an expression of our dedication to filling those gaps and to improving the onboarding, getting started experience. And then while it's sort of tangentially related to documentation, we want to improve finding modules as well, make that easier for you. And then I'll quickly note, this is a little farther out, but we want to make hosting simpler and faster. So it's not too hard to set up a server that can then run your Apostrophe site. But I think by creating a cloud sort of service for you, then we can make that even easier, even faster, and make deployment of staging and production environments easy as well. So thanks for listening to me today. Please check it out on GitHub, give it a star, and follow the progress. Test it out yourself, both the site and using the CLI. And then you can start contributing to us. There was a talk this morning about selfish contribution. Selfishly contribute by checking out the docs and tell us what needs to improve. And we'd really appreciate that. And then we have all these community platforms you can check out at apostropheCMS.com/community, where we'd love to have you join us as well. This is a bunch of my information and a link to our chat. But if anyone has any questions, we have like negative 13 seconds. But if there are any quick questions, I'd be happy to answer those. I don't know how to see if there are any, but I think we might be all set. Thanks again for coming. And I'll be hanging out and in Slack, and you can reach out to me and we can talk about things. Yeah, have a good day.